Hello and welcome to The Take. I'm your host, Chesley McNeil. Each weekday, we're looking at stories, making headlines, and bringing experts from our community to give their take. Here's a look back at some of the top takes from this week and how those in the know are seeing those stories that impact you.
Lawmakers still have to pass most of the full year appropriations bills. Without them, we are right back at another shutdown deadline. Both parties are gearing up for a fight over health care subsidies and other policy attachments that could make any funding bill harder to pass. The Senate's 60-vote threshold means even routine funding can stall, raising the odds of last-minute brinkmanship. Let's search for some answers now with Dr. William Resch, the chair of Georgia State's Department of Public Management and Policy. Welcome to the show. Thanks for helping us sort all this out.
Thanks for having me, Cheryl.
Okay, so we've just come out the other side of the longest shutdown in U.S. history. How fragile is this funding agreement that's currently in place?
I'd say extremely fragile. There's no promise from the House whether or not to hear or to stage a vote in respect to the Senate vote that was promised. And so there's a lot of uncertainty around that. There's a lot of uncertainty as to when a Senate vote would actually happen and exactly the details of the Senate vote that they agreed on.
So a deal's in place, but still so much limbo. You hear the phrase just kicking the can down the road a little longer, because the question is Washington any closer to solving the root causes of these budget standoffs, or are we just delaying the next crisis?
We definitely have not solved the root cause, which is the level of partisanship and the gridlock that we have in terms of a hyper-partisan Congress. And the irony is that the length of this shutdown cuts kind of both ways in the future. On the one hand, it should have taught everyone how damaging and unpopular these things are. But on the other hand, it may have convinced a couple people on both sides that brinkmanship works for their side and can be tried again. And so the January deadline, when it comes around, which lesson these people took from this will tell us a lot about the risk of a repeat in January, particularly if the ACA subsidies are not restored to the Democrats' liking.
Yeah, you just mentioned the ACA subsidies. This is critical because it is how much people pay for health care. And we've seen that could double or more for a lot of Americans. The last shutdown fight centered heavily on that. Could they become the kind of issue that derails funding, even if there is bipartisan agreement elsewhere?
Oh, I think so. I mean, it's a major issue for the Democratic caucus. The subsidies in and of themselves, whether or not they're resolved, will not automatically cause a shutdown, but it'll certainly hang over the next funding cycle. And in that sense, I think ACA subsidies are really going to be the center of the debate. They do raise the temperature quite a bit, making, another standoff in January quite high. So we'll see. But even, whether or not something happens with ACA, there are other concerns that the Democratic caucus has over the way the Trump administration is dealing with, or let's say managing the executive branch. And so other issues could certainly arise in the meantime.
When we talk about the health care issue, we saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had been so staunchly in President Trump's camp for so long, really move to a more central position, saying that we have to, as a country, think about a way to help people afford health care. Do you think in these kind of critical 10 weeks you might find a little bit more of a central, should I even dare say, compromise when it comes to this issue because of some key Republicans raising those questions?
Well, the ACA in itself is a fairly centrist model of policy. If you go back to the 90s, it's actually quite close to a model that the Heritage Foundation had proposed in the 1990s. The Republican Party has certainly shifted to the right on this issue since then. But the subsidies that Americans enjoy through the ACA are, substantial. And these people will vote with their wallets in many respects if their healthcare costs go up. And so, whether or not a compromise, as in shifting the policy towards a Republican preference, it's unclear at this point exactly what the Republican preference is. There hasn't been a healthcare plan really articulated on that side.
Sure. Before we go, we have about a minute left. We don't want to lose what we saw to be the day-to-day impact in so many people's lives, not just federal workers, but SNAP delays, food banks overwhelmed during the shutdown. How did those disruptions shape public trust in government, and how could it shape the next deadline that we see, and how our lawmakers work through it?
Yeah, I mean, even though the government has in fact reopened, the damage from the shutdown doesn't vanish overnight. It's not as simple as just turning the lights back on. Agencies are going to be facing huge backlogs. Households from federal government workers went weeks without pay, but people who receive benefits like SNAP had those benefits reduced. The confidence in the federal government as a service provider has taken a real hit. And so those effects are going to play out for months, whether it's delayed services, slower data, or even the quieter decisions by people who might not decide to work for government or might leave government as a function of these huge shocks to their household incomes. And what gets lost, I think, is, it takes a long time to unwind disruption. So for every furloughed day, that creates a stack of postponed inspections, late benefit decisions, missed deadlines, etc.
3 Chinese astronauts are finally back on Earth, arriving more than a week late after a suspected piece of space debris cracked a window on their return capsule. While the astronauts are in good condition, this incident raising some bigger questions far beyond that particular mission itself. China's rapid expansion, its push for a lunar landing by 2030, and the risks posed by space debris, all reshaping global competition and the rules that govern orbit. So let's welcome in Lincoln Hines to the show, assistant professor in Georgia Tech School of International Affairs, specializing in Chinese foreign policy, security, and really the politics of outer space. Thanks for the time. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, what a fascinating conversation. When we look at this moment, what does it tell us about the future of human spaceflight, maybe during an era of some congestion in outer space and certainly international competition?
Yes, that's precisely the challenge that we're facing today. You will often hear people in the space community referring to what they call the 3 Cs. And that is what they say, that the outer space domain is becoming more competitive, more contested, and more congested. So it's being more competitive. There's more countries that are competing in outer space. It's becoming more contested. There are countries that are seeking to interfere in other states' ability to use outer space. And it's becoming more congested with space debris. And this space debris can be very highly consequential for space operators. So to give an example, this most recent incident, it actually endangered the ability to successfully carry out this mission and return back to Earth. However, this is not the only incident that we've experienced with space debris, and it's likely that this problem is only going to get worse.
I'm thinking about from my mom's filter, this morning in the kitchen, I'm like, be sure you clean up your mess. Who's actually responsible for cleaning up the space junk, for the debris left behind in orbit? Because it is like somebody's littering and we're not cleaning it up, and then it hits a spacecraft. And as more people end up in space, this will happen more. Who's responsible for cleaning up their mess?
Oh, well, this is a really difficult problem in international politics. First of all, I'll say, when you're wanting to actually go and remove a piece of junk, a piece of space debris from orbit, this is really difficult to do, and we can't quite do it right now. And part of the reason for that is that, we're talking about thousands of pieces that range from a lot of different sizes. Some of them might be the size of a fleck of paint. Some might be a defunct satellite in orbit. And these are traveling when you're in low Earth orbit, the one that we use mostly, that's closest to Earth. These are traveling at speeds of around 18,000 miles per hour. So technically, this is really difficult to do. Politically, this is also really difficult because if you have the ability to actually grab junk or debris in space, well, then you also have something that you could use to interfere with another state's satellites. So this is really complicated politically. Though, different countries, the United States has tried coming through with different guidelines for how to tell space operators to try to remove satellites before they become defunct. But again, there aren't good international guidelines for doing this.
Do you think guidelines like that will start to be part of the conversation? That would require cooperation between countries that are adversarial, China and the United States being a perfect example.
Yeah, this incident, fortunately, the Chinese taikonauts, China's equivalent of astronauts, made it home safely to Earth. But hopefully this is going to be a bit of a wake-up call. I'll note that, in 2007, China carried out an anti-satellite test, and this was the greatest debris-generating test in history, creating over 3,000 pieces of space debris. And some of that space debris even came within close proximity to the International Space Station. But since then, we've seen other incidents. India tested an anti-satellite weapon. Russia's tested an anti-satellite weapon. And so we have to get a lot of countries on board. And China is not the same country it was in 2007, especially in the space domain. China is far more advanced, far more dependent, and its capabilities, for instance, the possession of its own space station, mean that it has a lot more at stake. And so the hope is that of the dangers and the problems of this recent episode, that the silver lining might be that we might see a greater alignment of interest with China and the United States, the two largest stakeholders in the space domain. And hopefully down the line that will lead to something positive.
First-time homebuyers facing some of the toughest conditions in decades, with the median age of new buyers rising to about 40 years old, even as high prices, elevated mortgage rates, and scarce starter home inventory push affordability out of reach for so many. Meanwhile, a new proposal from the Trump administration is sparking debate about home affordability. A 50-year mortgage, that's the proposal. Together, the pieces paint a picture of a housing market where entry is increasingly difficult and policy solutions offer relief only with significant long-term consequences. So let's try to make some sense of all of this with Metro Atlanta financial expert Andrew Poulos. Good to see you, Andrew.
Cheryl, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm trying to wrap my head around this 50-year mortgage, especially if you're starting at age 40. You do the math and it's like, wow, okay? So when we're looking at today's housing market, what's the single biggest barrier facing especially first-time home buyers?
Well, we've got unaffordability with rising home prices, and we've got wages that aren't keeping up. So when you combine those two, it makes perfect sense where the average first-time home buyer age is moving up to 40 years of age versus a few years ago, last year, it was around 38 years of age, right? But the unaffordability is the core issue here that needs to be addressed, and a 50-year loan is not the solution. I mean, when I saw that was proposed by President Trump, I almost fell out of my chair last week.
You talked about that 40-year-old average, age for a first-time buyer. That's really significant because you think about the 20 years prior to that. So that's somebody who's starting a career, perhaps starting a family, trying to pay very high rental prices while socking away a little bit for a home. A home is really a key when you talk about cycle breaking or generational wealth. So the impact for this is way beyond just, owning a house.
Absolutely. And look, the proposed 50-year mortgage loan by the Trump administration is so that someone can be able to to bypass the barrier of entry to be able to get into a home when they may not necessarily be able to afford a 30-year. I've run the numbers, so let me just give you just a very quick analysis on a $500,000 loan, which is probably the average cost in Metro Atlanta for a house, a decent house, $500,000. If you do the numbers on a 50-year loan, if you were to keep that loan and you're still alive at the end of that time frame, you would have to turn that $500,000 into over 1.92 million that the bank would have received in interest, right? That's absurd at this point. I mean, it's if you can't afford a home on a 30-year loan, you're certainly not going to be able to afford it on a 50-year, because the difference in the monthly payment is probably somewhere around $300, give or take. And listen, when you're a homeowner, you got to be able to budget for property taxes increasing, your insurance is going to increase, that dishwasher, the refrigerator, at some point are going to need to be replaced. So in my opinion, if someone, regardless of age, if someone can't afford a home on a 30-year, 50 years not going to make any difference. You might as well just be a renter until you could afford a house pretty much and be sustainable.
Those numbers say it all. You're talking about paying 4 times more than something's worth because you're stretching it out over so long. That long-term vision really important as we're talking through affordability. What do you think needs to change for the market to finally open up, not just to first-time buyers, to be manageable for the greatest number of people in general?
Look, I think there's a few things. First and foremost, obviously, interest rates are having an impact on all of us, right? Whether you're a first-time home buyer, you're someone who already owns a home who's looking to refinance. So as interest rates begin to come down further, hopefully in 2026, that will have a positive impact. But overall, Cheryl, we've got to take into consideration that about 19 trillion of real estate in this country is held by boomers. So baby boomers are sitting roughly on about 42% of all real estate, and they're not willing to sell those assets. One of the reasons that many boomers don't sell it is obviously they pass it on to the beneficiaries, but they don't want to sell it because of the tax implications. So if we get creative and we have tax legislation that will incentivize maybe some boomers who would like to sell their assets, but just don't want to take the big tax hit and give the money to the government, that would potentially free up a lot of real estate, right? So there's ways that you can craft tax policies and favorable tax legislation that would bring more inventory to the market, and that would bring affordability to the market as well.
Georgia State University is taking a major leap into the future of tech education. They're partnering with Google on a new artificial intelligence innovation lab aimed at opening doors for the next generation of Atlanta students. Google is committing $6 million to build and launch an AI innovation lab at GSU, a major infusion aimed at expanding pathways into computer science and AI careers for Atlanta students. The program will deliver after-school AI and computer science learning for high schoolers all across Metro Atlanta, targeting students who often lack access to advanced STEM curricula. It's all for a university which has been named among America's top 5 most innovative public universities for 11 straight years. So let's look at this collaboration and what's ahead for GSU with its Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, Jared Abramson. Thanks so much for the time and congratulations. That is impressive, 11 years running.
Thank you so much.
So what does it mean to you personally to help unlock these kinds of opportunities for students who may never have imagined a career in AI, not because they don't have the skills, but they just lack the opportunity to learn more about it?
Yes, it's something very special to me personally. I am and was an underdog city kid myself, and so having access through the state university to be able to be exposed to things that students couldn't actually see was possible for them means something really special to me, and it's something we can't wait to provide to the students of the Metro Atlanta area.
We see the representation of that visual partnership behind you. What was the driving vision behind this connection between Google and yourselves as a $6 million AI innovation lab?
Yeah, well, Google could really partner up with anybody to find a space in order to build a lab and be able to train 50 students at a time in the lab. But the beauty of this partnership is be able to leverage the College of Education within the Georgia State University so that we can take these skills, the technical curriculum, and embed it within how we train the next generation of educators. So we can take these skills and AI literacy to students across the state of Georgia through K-12 applications and where we place all of our educators and everybody we graduate through the College of Education. So really the best of both worlds, where Google as a technology leader and then Georgia State being able to leverage technology and scale in order to improve student success. Really a nice marriage.
Yeah, I go by campus every day. Help us kind of lock in where it will be on campus. Will it be right in that College of Education area?
It's going to be at 55 Park Place, so the home of our Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, as well as our Robinson College of Business. So right across from Woodruff Park, at the core of our academic center.
What a great location. What about a timeline?
Well, we're going to build out the lab. It will be ready in May of 2027. And the first cohorts of students will come in fall 27. We can't wait to get it started.
That is going to come very quickly, and that's exciting. How does this collaboration ensure students from lower income communities in particular that are not left behind, that they will not be left behind in this surging AI era? It's all moving so quickly.
Yeah, well, it's really all about access, and it's all about early exposure. So rather than waiting for students to get to college, we like to meet them where they're at really early on. So we're going to educate them while they're in high school, as well as, like I said, get into the K-12 so we can give early exposure to those in grade school so that they know what's possible in the world of technology.
I love that, to cast a vision for our younger students as they're thinking about career opportunities. There are two sides of this equation, certainly for the students, and that's so important, but also there is a need in communities for these workers. Georgia's tech sector booming. How does this program help meet the state's growing workforce needs?
Absolutely. What's really special about Georgia State is about 80% of our graduates stay in the state of Georgia, and then they contribute to the workforce. So when we invest in education programs here, we know that the results and the product that comes out is really a pipeline of talent that drives the workforce, and they stay right here in the state of Georgia.
So are there plans to then eventually connect these students that get this exposure with their next steps, like an internship, apprenticeship, dual enrollment, those kinds of opportunities?
Absolutely. And that's really the beauty of us being in downtown Atlanta, having access to experiential learning opportunities. So when we bring students to campus, they're surrounded by Fortune 500 companies, and they see their next step in their education as well as where they're going to be in terms of careers. So right on campus, you can meet your next collaborator, your next boss, the next group of people who are really going to be leading technology here in downtown Atlanta.
Open that door for your next boss. You just never know. When you look ahead a decade from now, how do you hope that this partnership with Google will have changed the lives of students who walk through that lab?
Really, when it kind of comes full cycle. So when the students who were trained in the lab come back to the lab as mentors, and they're able to show the young students that they once were in the same place, right? They're going to be those visible role models of progress. And that full cycle, when the folks that we train come back to be the trainers, that's when we know it's fully working.
And it's how it impacts every single one of us who call Metro Atlanta home. That stat you shared really stands out, that 80% of these students then stay and are really important contributors in our community. Is that in your mind, as we just have a few seconds left, how you really close that circle?
Absolutely. It's inspiring that next generation, and then making sure we have personalized support models to ensure they make progress and then be leaders, not just consumers of this technology.
Last week, President Trump signed a sweeping new executive order aimed at overhauling America's foster care system with a focus on helping children transition into stable housing, education, and long-term support. The plan creates a national resource hub, expands community partnerships, and directs federal agencies to modernize how they track and assist foster youth. The White House says the goal is to ensure that no child ages out of care without a safety net.
As we make America great again, we are going to protect American children in foster care, and we're going to ensure that they will never, ever be forgotten. These children will never be forgotten, and they're going to grow up to be unbelievable, strong, smart, wealthy, productive citizens.
And those promises now raise big questions about what this will look like on the ground, especially here in Georgia. All right, time to welcome back to the Take Root Family Services CEO Allison Ash. Welcome back to the show. Help us to break down this initiative that what it means for families, foster parents, and young people and age out of care. At the ground level, Allison, what's most significant about the part of this new federal initiative?
Well, I feel like what's most significant about it is the fact that it happened. Over the past several years, we've seen a heightened attention not only to children in foster care, but children aging out of foster care. There's been a number of initiatives that have happened here in the state of Georgia, including the Fostering Success Act, and now to see a federal executive order that supports these vulnerable young people, both in foster care and aging out of foster care, is really exciting for us in the community and in the provider community.
Yeah. Does this executive order fill the gaps in Georgia's foster care system?
There's a lot of good content in the executive order, and there are gaps that it fills, especially in the area of education. The order, often children aging out of foster care get a lot of support if they're pursuing 2-year or 4-year degrees, and the order includes credentialing programs and apprenticeships and kind of certifications, things that young people can get in a quicker fashion. It doesn't fill all the gaps, though. There's not really anything in the executive order about access to mental health, which is a huge issue for all children, but certainly for children who have had the traumatic experience of interfacing with the child welfare system.
Yeah, we understand that roughly 500 young people age out of care each year. Which part of this new initiative would directly help them?
The educational piece is really significant for them. It provides that currently there are some educational vouchers that support young people aging out of care that are pursuing 2- and 4-year degrees. This executive order does extend that to apprenticeships and credentialing programs. There's also a platform that's going to be created due to the executive order where young people can find resources. So if a young person ages out of the foster care system and they choose not to stay engaged with the Department of Family and Children's Services, they're really on their own. They are on their own looking for education. They're on their own looking for mentorship, looking for housing. Often they don't even know what a lease is, but they're trying to find an apartment. So this online platform will give them a place where they can go and find organizations like Well-Root Family Services.
Target is rolling out a new way to connect with shoppers. They're going to do more eye contact, more greeting, more help on the floor. It's part of a bigger push to rebuild in-store experience and win back customers after a tough sales year. The new 10-4 engagement rule says employees are trained to smile, wave, and make eye contact within 10 feet of a shopper. And then they must verbally greet customers and offer assistance once they're up close at about 4 feet. The policy rolled out to more than 2,000 stores and is part of a broader turnaround effort after in-store sales dipped more than 3% last quarter. So what does this change in signal mean about retail and where it's headed? Will shoppers respond to this? Let's bring in friend of the show, consumer expert Morgan Ward. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
All right, what does this tell us about how retail is trying to reconnect with customers in this online dominated shopping era that we're in?
They're trying to reconnect with customers. They're sort of engineering friendliness from customer service people to the customer itself by mandating how the customer service people interact with their customers. As you said, at 10 feet, I think they need to make eye contact, smile, wave, and then at 4 feet, they have to verbally greet and then ask if they need any help. That is, if the customer needs any help. So they think that they can make people feel more welcome, more helped, and hopefully that would lead to people having, a more positive experience in Target, maybe being coming back into the stores and being brand loyal. That's the idea. Morgan,
I would think that they would have to do this anyway, or maybe they should be doing this anyway. But does the interaction like this move the needle at all?
It's such an important and good question. One thing is, a lot of times when you go into Target, you don't want to have 5 different customer experiences. That's not how we've been taught to navigate Target. So it's a question mark whether this is a problem that customers diagnose themselves. And it could come across as a little inauthentic, if you're interacting with people constantly. So I can see customers having question marks. Of course, being well respected and engaged in a store is always positive for customers. I think it's going to be how this rolls out and how customers perceive those new kinds of interactions that will decide whether this is effective.
Seems like this approach works better when it comes to maybe food service, but does it work better in other environments better than maybe retail?
Possibly better in retail and maybe in different kinds of retail when you want a more hands-on experience. If you're in a luxury store and you want that moment-to-moment help. I don't know. Target really is a place that people browse and kind of have their own personal engagement with products. So it may just not be the right environment, and that might just not be what customers are looking for. But I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, it seems like a bit scary, like I'm shopping. And why are you looking at me? A little bit scary. Target is signaling, are they signaling something bigger here on how they want to differentiate themselves from Walmart or, say, Amazon or any other retail?
I think that Target has always thought of itself as more customer forward, more friendly, more engaging with customers, certainly than a Walmart or even Amazon where you don't talk to anybody. But I don't think that customers say that they walk into a Target store and feel neglected. So maybe customers will like this more. Maybe it will be a source of differentiation. People always say they want to give the best customer service, and that's actually really hard in such a customer service saturated market like ours. So maybe this will make a difference.
We'll see. Bottom line, Target if they get it right, what's the biggest change that shoppers will actually feel when it comes to this 10-4 approach?
Well, I think they will have to do less personal navigation, and maybe they'll be more led to each product or sort of shown products by the staff. So maybe it'll be a less solitary consumption experience and more interactive. I could see that being the case.
Okay, hopefully they don't hover too much. We'll see. We'll see if it works. New data shows how aggressive these schemes across Peachtree State have been. On average, each Georgian got about one robocall every day in 2024. In the first quarter of the previous year, there were 437 reports of fraud incidents per 100,000 people, topping all states. In 2023, Georgia consumers reported over 65,000 scams in 2023, accounting for roughly $2.1 million loss per 1,000 residents. Wow. Here now to help us avoid some of these schemes is Matt Mazzico. He is the general manager at Nomorobo. Well, hello, Matt. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right. Why are these schemers or scammers becoming more aggressive right now?
Well, it's kind of two things. So this year, it's obviously been the government shutdown. We haven't had any enforcement going on for the past month or so, which makes it kind of a tempting target. And then the second thing is every year about this time when we go into things like Medicare open enrollment, tax season, Christmas season, people waiting to get packages and stuff like that. What that does is that just brings these guys out in spades because they know that people are anxious, that there are all these things that are urgent to them. And when you get anxious and when you get urgent, you tend to make bad decisions.
And we hear this about these scams. Urgency is really the main key. Is that still the focus, especially when we talk about fraud nationally? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it really is. They're trying to get you to think that you got to do something quickly. They often couple that with the threat of financial loss. You put those two together and it's a bad recipe.
Is it still our more seasoned, folks that are more at risk with this, or is it the young people who are online more?
That's a great question. So typically we have been focused on those more seasoned people. However, with the way that young people really are gravitating toward both these messaging apps that can't be really controlled, say, by your phone company, so things like WhatsApp or Telegram, and the proliferation of cash apps like Venmo and Cash App and Zelle, you put those two things together and the fraudsters have figured out a lot of tools that they basically can spin up almost instantly in those environments. It's really unregulated there. So you click on one wrong link, for example, in an app like Telegram, and you could find your bank account being siphoned. It's kind of like the wild, wild west in some of those places.
Wow. Matt, are we at a point now where you really just can't tell anymore? Like somebody could take my voice, call my mother and use it to scam her. Is that where we are?
Well, it's headed that direction and it feels kind of scary, but with companies like mine at Nomorobo and also just the industry in general, and of course the FCC and the FTC now that the shutdown's over, we are working very hard to try to solve these problems. We have heard, rightly so, I think, from consumers that they feel, just like you said, that it almost feels like we can't protect ourselves and what are we going to do? And everybody is kind of putting their best foot forward and trying really hard, but we all still need to continue to remain vigilant and be very skeptical of the things that cross our wires, so to speak.
Yeah, talking about being careful. Are callback traps more common? Are they becoming a little bit more common? And if they are, what should people do when they receive one?
They are still out there. I don't know if I'd say they're becoming more or less common, but we saw a number of these, for example, during the shutdown with regard to SNAP benefits, people calling you and saying that if you get this call, that means you're eligible for free SNAP money, but if you don't call right back, you're not going to get that free SNAP money. Again, urgency and financial loss, or gain in this case, I guess. But yes, trying to get you to call back to some other number, and who knows where that number is, who knows going to answer, who knows how much it's going to cost you, all of those sorts of things.
So what steps should our viewers take right now to be aware of any schemes or scams that target them?
Well, one great thing to do is obviously stay, tuned to whatever social networks you are on. And if you see something there, take a look at what it is. And if if you encounter one of these things, share it with your friends. At NoMoRobo, we have a great resource we call NoMoRobo Fraud Fighters, which you can find on our website, nomorobo.com, which lists all of the latest scams, kind of what to say, what not to say, what they're trying to do, gives you some strategy and advice. And that's a good place to start as well. And also, use an app like ours, use an app like someone else's to protect yourselves, because all of these apps do a really good job. And in fact, we're giving ours away for free this week for Fraud Awareness Week. So anyone who goes to nomorobo.com/free can get our top of the line app, Android or iOS, for free for a year, kind of as our way of saying, hey, we heard you and we want to help you out.
And we are restoring balance to the lives of millions of women who have been ignored for too long. And that's what it means to make America healthy again.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy announcing the removal of long-standing black box warning for many hormone replacement therapies. The shift comes as newer evidence shows that the risks are far lower for healthy women in their 40s and 50s who start treatment earlier in menopause. Let's bring in Dr. Mary Dolan from the Emory School of Medicine to help us cut through the headlines and understand what it really means for these women. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thank you for covering this information.
Absolutely.
That's so important for so many women.
Absolutely. Doc, in your view, why is this such a significant shift in women in midlife?
Well, this is a small step forward because there's been so much fear surrounding the use of hormones and breast cancer.
What's the biggest misconception when it comes to women and still have about hormone replacement therapy?
Well, the biggest misconception, I think, is that it's the fountain of youth. So it will not stop aging, but it can help in healthier aging. So women are living longer now, and you may spend up to 30 or 40% of your life after menopause. So we've got to start thinking about how to live a healthy life during that time. And there's lots of changes that happen at menopause that affect the heart and the bones and other systems. So it's not just about, hot flashes.
So what's the first question a woman should ask their provider at that first menopause visit?
Are you menopause certified?
Good question.
Have you had special training and interest? Women can go to menopause.org and search for providers that are menopause certified. Because of this study and its publication in 2002, there's 20 plus years of providers who have not been educated on hormone use, and there's been a lot of fear. So I think that it's important to find a provider that has really focused in on treatment of midlife and menopausal women in order to get kind of a review of your options. And I'm not saying hormones are for everybody, but women, when they know their options, they can make great decisions.
Yeah. When you're talking to patients, what risks do you still flag, and how do you help them understand the real numbers rather than fear?
Well, I think that it still is kind of an individual conversation depending upon the person's past history and what their goals are. So I think it really is individualized in terms of when we talk about risks. There are certain risks where we wouldn't consider hormones as an option, like if they've had an estrogen sensitive cancer, if they have bleeding that's, from unknown etiology, if they've had a history of blood clot, stroke. uncontrolled hypertension. There's still a lot of things we like to try to optimize, their existing health in terms of talking about the options. But we have a lot more options now, not just hormones, for a lot of the menopausal symptoms.
Okay, so we got about 30 seconds left. Should more women be considering hormone replacement therapy now that the warning has been taken off, or is it still a case-by-case decision?
I think they should be considering speaking to a provider that's menopause certified that can help them know about their options and make the right choices. And I do want to put in a plug for the use of vaginal hormone therapy, which is safe for symptoms that are associated with, vaginal atrophy and thinning.
Dunwoody is kicking off its holidays with lanterns and lights and even a mini farm as part of the annual Village Holiday Celebration. The event is back, bigger, brighter, and spread out across the entire shopping district this year. Let's bring in Rosemary Watts, the executive director of Create Dunwoody, to walk us through what families can expect. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, Rosemary, talk to us about this big time event you got coming up and for the holiday season.
Yeah, this is an amazing event that we've got. I Create Dunwoody. I do arts and culture for the city of Dunwoody, and our primary purpose is for economic development. So this event is a perfect example of something that we do with the Dunwoody Alliance, the Merchant Alliance. So basically, we have about 35 businesses in the greater Dunwoody area, which includes the village, the plaza, and the shops of Dunwoody, the whole span that goes across 3 different commercial areas. And we will have 35 different businesses participating. So each business does their own activity. We have Santa, we've got a mini farm, we've got a little artisan market, and then we'll do performances right in the middle of the whole center. And we have Santa coming down, elves roaming around, and our Dunwoody High School amazing Principal Bass is going to be the MC for our event. So it is going to be a huge, exciting thing. It's only our second year doing it, but the first year was fabulous. And we just expect this one to be even bigger and better.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, how long you've been doing it, but you told us that, how long you've been doing it. And talk to me about how this strengthens really the connection between residents and local businesses throughout that village area.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the businesses want to reach out to the community and get people in and get the whole area activated. For years, there just wasn't a whole lot of cross going from one area to the other. People just went to their one location and left. Well, this is a way to engage everyone to go into all the different areas in the village. I mean, there's something exciting in every little corner. So it's really a place for the community to come together to watch these performances by local groups. We've got about eight different music groups, from violins to dancers, that really bring people together, and then just culminating with the lighting of the tree and the snowflakes that we've put up with. Our Dunwoody is doing a holiday headquarters, trying to get people in to see all the fabulous things we have to do. So it is a huge community event for us.
Wow. For a family attending the first time, maybe they didn't make it last year, what should they expect when they arrive?
So they will go to one of the locations, and we've got these great maps. There's going to show you all the different things that you can do. So you can check off 2 out of each different area that we have, each of the 3 areas that we have. Go around and check everything out and come back to the Create Dunwoody table, and we give them a prize. It's almost like a little scavenger hunt. You go, check these things off. And we also have this lantern decorating workshop. So 2 different locations where people can go and decorate. And right before the lighting of the tree, we'll do a little lantern parade. We'll have huge prizes. We've got tons of prizes donated by all the local organizations and businesses. So they'll be able to get up on stage, show off their lanterns, we'll give out the prizes. There's just lots to do, and this map will kind of show them where everything is and how to get to everything, and they can get to the website and see all the performances.
Is this the first year for the mini farm? And if so, how does that fit into the whole Christmas theme there? Because when I first read it, I said, a mini farm? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I got this idea from going to other events, and this is a little petting farm. This is the first time we've done it. And it is a way, again, to activate another part of the area that wasn't part of this event last year. So the Shops of Dunwoody is going to have this petting farm with artisans all on the sidewalks, so we can get people over to that area, because we want to have something interesting for them. What is the reason to bring them over there? That plus the lantern workshops, plus 3 or 4 of the businesses are actually opening their doors for free hot cider, apple cider, and cookie decorating and ornament decorating. So that is just one of the things that are trying to bring people over there.
And so what type of animals will you have in there? Do you know? Can you reveal that?
You know, I'm not sure what they're going to bring, but I have been to them before, and they have little rabbits, little cows, little miniature, just little miniature farm animals. Yeah, and we also have lots of volunteers coming. I mean, Dunwoody High School, amazing. They're bringing DECA people and Hope people from their organizations. The Dunwoody National Charity League is coming, and they're bringing tons of volunteers. So it really truly is a community effort and event, and we call it the Dunwoody Village. It takes a village to make all these things happen. We're so excited.
Sounds great. I may be stopping by. Rosemary Watts, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah,
really
I hope you do.
All right.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yep, take care. If you want to go to this event, this is happening this Sunday from 3 to 7 p.m. in the greater Dunwoody Village area. This is at the intersection of Chamblee and Dunwoody Road and Mount Vernon Road. Best part, it's free to attend. Before we go, my final take. If you find it hard to stop indulging in sugary drinks, you're not alone. More than 60% of American adults report drinking sugar-sweetened beverages 1 or more times daily. That's according to the CDC. Soda is one of the most popular drinks in America, and many find it that they can't stop. Well, this is by design, according to medical experts. Sweeteners flood the brain with dopamine, which is a reward, sensing pleasure and motivation. Sodas hyperactivate that dopamine and make your brain crave it, which makes it even harder to resist it. That, experts say, is with the billions of dollars that soda manufacturers invest in making soda a part of our everyday lives, like for an event, like a cookout or something like that, you feel like you have to have a soda. They invest that and make us think that, right? So the experts suggest in order to break the spell of sugary drinks, especially soda, you're going to need a lifestyle change because it has become a part of your life. So they're saying if you change your lifestyle, you could possibly change from drinking so many sugary drinks. Until then, folks, chug a lug, right? You got to have at least some water. When there's a lot of water in soda, but there's also a lot of sugar. You're talking about straight sugar you're drinking. So be mindful of that. And be mindful of the day, folks. You see somebody, stop and say hello. Have a great day.